I'm Bob Harris of Decorative Concrete Institute. Welcome to Duramin's training and educational series for industrial and decorative flooring systems. Skraffino is a very versatile product that can be used both interior and exterior. There's just a wide variety and a host of applications in which you can use Skraffino. It's offered in 6 variations. It's offered in a regular version, a fine version, and a super fine version, both in gray and white. So that gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of your design opportunities. Primarily on an interior floor, if you're going for a smooth floor, the logic is you prime first with CP 1000, which is what we're about to do. It's a double prime system, so theoretically what you would do is you'd prime the day before. Roughly 10 hours later, you'd come back, reprime while you're setting up your mixing station, getting all your powders ready, and then about, depending on the temperatures and conditions, about 2 hours after that reprime, then you're ready to go on to the next application with the Skraffino. On interior applications, the logic is putting a body coat down first, which is the Skraffino regular, and if you're going for a real smooth floor that's free of any trowel lines or ridges, what you're doing is you're sanding with a sanding screen, perhaps a 120 grit. Roughly after 2 to 3 hours of the first application of Skraffino, you're vacuuming that up, pre-dampening the surface, putting a tight coat of Skraffino fine, and if you want to go real smooth, you would sand that again, same scenario as the first application, pre-wet it, and then put a tight coat of Skraffino super fine. And you're able to get what I would refer to as a seamless floor. It looks very smooth without any trowel ridges. But you don't have to just keep it bound to the inside. It's a great product to use exterior as well. It's used around pool decks. Sometimes it's an application referred to as a knockdown finish, and that's where you're using a pneumatic sprayer, meaning air-driven sprayer with a hopper gun. So the logic would be, as one possibility or one scenario, you would put a base coat down. You could actually tint the material with colorfast pigment, and you would put a base coat down. Once that dried, you could come back with a stencil, an adhesive back or a paper stencil non-adhesive, and put that over that first coat, and then you could come with a contrasting color, put that in a hopper gun, and then spray it over your stencil, and then remove the stencil, and then you've got the appearance of a grout joint. So it's a very versatile product. You can use it on driveways, walkways, just a wide variety of applications. But one thing never changes, and that's how you prepare the surface, which we've demonstrated in previous videos, and this priming. The priming is key to how the Skraffino system works and ultimately adds to the longevity of the system. So we're going with the CP 1000. For demonstration purposes, we're just going to simply dump it on the floor and roll it out. On a larger application, you can put it in a pump-up sprayer or a backpack pump sprayer, and spray it on, and then at a minimum you either want to back roll it or you can use a push broom, forcing it into the pores. You just don't want to leave it puddled in real thick applications. So we're going to put our CP 1000 down. While I'm rolling this, another consideration on porous concrete or gypcrete, for example, which is considered very porous. In this concrete, you can see that it's drying very quickly, so this would be considered extremely porous concrete. So on this first application, it's not a bad idea to dilute the primer, 1 part water to 1 part CP 1000, apply it, and then come back and apply a second coat prior to the day of the installation with a second coat to really seal off, lock this down in there, and then come back the following day and put an actual third coat of the CP 1000 down. And what that does is it totally seals the concrete off, and it's going to extend the working time of the Skraffino. It mentioned earlier, if you put Skraffino over a very absorbent or porous surface, especially if the sun is out, it's simply going to dry so quick you're not going to be able to get the material down in an expeditious manner. So keep in mind, porous concrete, double prime, thinning that first application down 1 part water to 1 part CP 1000. Okay, we're getting ready to apply our first coat of Skraffino regular. Remember, it's a double prime system. Yesterday afternoon or evening, so roughly 8 to 10 hours prior, we put our first coat of CP1000 acrylic bonding primer. So now it's time to apply our second coat. So traditionally what we do is when we come back the next day, while we're setting up the mixing station and putting the tarps down and getting everything ready, one person's out priming. That typically will take an hour, hour and a half to get all set up, get all of your measurements ready. And during that time frame, you're allowing this primer to dry. So here's what we're going to do is we're going to apply our second coat of the CP1000 in preparation for our first application of the Skraffino. So again, to recap, which we've already discussed, this material can be spray applied for larger applications, and it also can be broomed into the surface if you're working on a large area. But don't skip this. Oftentimes people want to speed up the process and think that the single prime is sufficient. It really is not. So you don't skip this. This is one of the key elements to a successful Skraffino application is the second prime coat. And by doing that, by putting the second prime coat, it really extends the working life of the material. So you're able to get on the material. You have plenty of open time, plenty of working time by doing this. All right, we're getting ready for our application of Skraffino Skimcoat. Remember, Skraffino is offered in 6 variations. Here we're using Skraffino Gray. The G stands for gray regular. You can also get it in fine and super fine. Skraffino is also offered in white variations or white versions, and you can get it in the white regular, the white fine, or the white super fine. So we're getting ready to apply on our panel here, and just as a recap, remember this is a double prime system. So yesterday what we did is we primed the concrete substrate with CP1000, and then you want to wait a minimum of 8 to 10 hours before the second application. So in our case what we did is we came back the following day, today, and we applied the second coat of the CP1000 bonding primer to the surface, and then roughly 2 hours has transpired, and now it's time for the application of our gray Skraffino regular. Couple of observations. If you're working on a larger project, say you have multiple applications or batches, I should say, maybe you have 10, 15, 20 batches of the Skraffino you're putting down, what I like to do is just take a clean garbage can and line it with a bag, and I'll take the CP1000 and I'll literally dump it into the garbage can and put maybe 3 buckets, 15 gallons or so. Prior to that though, it's always just a good idea to pre-blend your polymer. So we'll pop the lid off and we'll take a squirrel mix drill and we'll just go ahead and blend the polymer. Sometimes when the polymer's set for extended periods, the solids have a tendency to kind of segregate down at the bottom. So it's just good routine practice to pre-blend all of your polymers prior to use. The mix ratio on CP1000 is 4.6 liters of liquid, and you can see here we have a bucket that's already previously been cut out to the proper ratio, to the proper mix ratio, which is 4.6 liters. So the logic is you take your bucket, you submerge it down into the canister of CP1000, you put it on this shelf, it spews out the side, and when it stops running off the side, it's at a level mark. Now you go and you dump it into our metal bucket. Speaking of metal buckets, I'm a huge fan of mixing all of my cement-based toppings in metal buckets. What happens is sometimes when you use a plastic bucket, depending on the type of or the style of mixing paddle that you're using, it could actually start to degrade the bucket, and you'll end up with little pieces or little fibers of plastic bucket. That's not an issue with metal buckets. A couple last things before we mix it. There is a unique coloring system with this product if you choose to. It's called colorfast. It's packaged in buckets like this. There's a wide variety of different colors, and basically it gives you a chart with different pigment loads for the color intensity that you desire. And so you might put a medium dose and take a half a cup, for example. You would dip the half a cup into your powder, shake it out, put it into the liquid, spin it, so you're pre-tinting the CP1000. Once you've pre-colored the CP1000, then it's time to put the powder into the mix. What I like to do, since we're getting ready, before I use any product that has cement-based materials in it, I like to loosen the material up and roll it like so, and I can feel it. What it's doing is it's fluffing it up. as this material sits on a shelf, it has a tendency to consolidate. It compacts the material. And when we pop it off and we go to dump it, if it's compact, it's just going to go in one big solid blob, and it's just going to splash everywhere. So get in the routine of loosening your materials up. All right, let's take that lid off. We'll get rid of that CP1000, and we'll talk about mixing. Okay, so you notice here we have our CP1000. So what we'll do is we'll tilt it backwards ever so slightly and then dump it right into our bucket. Remember, it's very important. It's always put the liquid in first and then slowly start adding the powder. You're never going to add the powder to the bucket first and then start adding the liquid. So let's move our CP1000 bucket off of here. As we've talked about throughout this series of instructional videos, safety is no game. We're working with cement-based products, so you do want to protect yourself. Wear a dust respirator when you're mixing these powders to protect yourself from the airborne dust particulate. Brian will dump in roughly half of the bucket, and then he'll let me mix that for 30 seconds or so. And then once that's mixed, we'll go ahead and dump in the remaining material and mix that for about 2 more minutes, and then we're ready to apply. Now I do like to keep a margin trowel in my back pocket here. What happens is some of the material will accumulate on the side of the bucket and stay dry. So I like to just go ahead and keep the side of the bucket clean. If we don't keep the side of the bucket clean, when we dump the material onto our prepared floor, the first thing that's going to hit the ground is this unmixed material. So you can tell on the viscosity of the material, it's a fairly fluid material. That's a good mix, and we're ready to apply.